Hi, I'm Yegi. I'm an entrepreneur and success coach who wants it all. Family, luxury, career, and the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. I created the Yegi Project to document my journey and inspire others to do the same. My mission is to change the world by influencing and leading others to do what they love and live fulfilled lives. Well, hi guys, Yegi here. A little back talk. I am smiling, but I'm super emotional because I was thinking about what updates I have for you guys. And unfortunately, the biggest update is I recently lost my grandpa. And it was very sudden and surprising. And obviously, he's my grandpa. He was older, but it was still very sudden and surprising and very heartbreaking. And we miss him so much. And I think I'm still in shock in a way too. It happened fairly recently, about, oh my gosh, 2 weeks already. But with that said, one thing that came up as we were talking with my grandma about it a little bit, he said recently he maybe was kind of feeling it. He was getting old. But one thing he had told her recently was, hey, I wish the last 10 years I didn't work and we actually spent more time together and traveled. And honestly, that was just kind of like a wake-up call again for me. Is because, again, a lot of people, especially probably all of those listeners now that are listening, we're all pretty eager to be better, to work on ourselves, to try to grow, to be successful, to make more money, right? To just try to have it all. And I am totally all about that. But I think this was a good reminder to kind of pause and get my priorities straight again, right? So again, I try to once in a while touch base with myself to make sure I'm balancing out my work, my family life, my friends, my personal needs as much as I can. But we do get carried away sometimes as humans. So sometimes tragedies do kind of ground us and makes us kind of look at the bigger picture. And since my grandma did say that, I really wanted to share that and kind of have people pause and think about that, right? And I remember the old study that I had read a long time ago. That's literally what it was. It says the number one regret people have on their deathbeds is not spending enough time with their loved ones or doing things, that they love. But I think it was one of the number one things is not spending enough time with their loved ones. And I think we don't really think about that. At least a lot of people that I know, including myself, we don't really think about that. We don't think about, oh, let me cherish this moment with the time I'm spending with my loved ones or with the people that I care for. We sometimes take it for granted. So I wanted to kind of dedicate this intro to this episode to that as a reminder for myself and everybody else that our time here is limited. And although we do need to set our priorities straight and focus on our goals, be the most we can be, we also need to set time aside to spend with our loved ones, because at the end of the day, when it's time for us to say goodbye, those are the memories that we're going to hold on tight to. We're not going to sit and cherish the memories that, oh my God, I have X amount of money in my bank account. That's not going to matter. It's going to matter that, hey, I have these great memories that I'm leaving my family and loved ones with, and experiences. So anyways, that was my update and a little thing that I want to share with you guys. But we try to move on. We try to remember the best moments. We try to live with the memories and know that hopefully the ones that passed, that left us in the world, are in a better place and are still part of us in our heart with their memories. So that's kind of how I look at it. I've been able to function, obviously, but no matter what, it's always sad. And I think in life, we also need to accept that sadness too, right? And be still. And actually, I'll foreshadow this comment to our guest for this episode. Her name is Dr. Alessandra Wall, and she talks about the art of nothingness. And I think sometimes we literally need that. And what that is you're literally sitting at least 5 minutes a day and doing nothing. And you're just processing. You're just processing how you feel, where you're at. And even if not that, you're just literally sitting and doing nothing. Even if your mind is going, even if you are thinking about 100 things at the same time, it's not meditating, but she calls it the art of nothing, and anybody can do it. And you can start off with about 1 minute to 5 minutes a day and really see the difference that it has on your stress, anxiety. So Dr. Alessandra Wall has specialized in the past in stress and anxiety. So she really is speaking with this art of nothing based on her experience with herself, with her patients. And now what she's doing that's super impressive, and what is her company, she is focusing on specifically women in high leadership roles that want to advance and really ultimately become CEOs, right? So that's how I interpreted it. But generally, she's working with women who want to be in high leadership roles, and she's giving them the tools, the guidance, and the coaching in order to get there. Now, I was like, oh, that's so cool. But talking to her more and more about this, I realized that, and she pointed out this numbers, the statistics in women in these high roles, especially in the finance and STEM industries, and that's what she's focusing on, is very skewed. About like maybe most 5% are women versus men. And we talk about that whole thing, right? How do we change that? How do we work that? So that's her real mission in life. And she found a way to fulfill this with her current job, tying in her experiences. I was just so mind blown. We need more people to really have jobs with purposes. And that's what I love talking about on this podcast. I want everybody to love their job and, feel like they're so fulfilled and so excited for doing what they're doing. And she's definitely one of those people. So her company is called Noteworthy. And what I love about her story is that she really waited it out. She gave it so much time before the company was successful. But now that the company has made it, that's the phrase I can use. But in a lot of cases, we don't give things enough time before we give up and we think it's a failure. But what she did was, instead of giving up on her company after 2 years of it not working out, her not seeing return, her spending all her money and working to pay for her company, she said, okay, I'm going to stick it out. And sure enough, sticking out, pivoting, making minor adjustments, it really became Noteworthy. Well, let's dive in and talk to Dr. Alessandra Wall and see all the amazing advice she has for us with her background of coaching and psychology. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Yegi Project. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to Dr. Alessandra Wall, who is a psychologist and is a master, a specialty coach for women in leadership, specifically senior leadership roles. So I'm so excited to get to pick her brain and get to know everything she has to share. I hope you guys are ready. We are in for an awesome ride. Please, Dr. Alessandra Wall, go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell us your story and a little bit of background so we can get the interview rolling.
Well, first and foremost, thank you very much for spending time with me. I love having these conversations. As you mentioned, I started my career as a clinical psychologist, actually retired last year from that, which is good.
Woo-hoo,
and
congrats.
These days I spend every day focusing very specifically on accelerating, supporting, elevating the careers of women, most often senior leaders in finance and in STEM. And I do that through my company, which is Noteworthy. I'm the founder, I'm the principal executive coach there. And those industries were chosen because they are male-dominated spaces. So that is what I spend every day, all day doing.
So what inspired you to go from being a clinical psychologist, because you could have taken that route, but instead applied that to try to do your own business, be an entrepreneur, but not only that, to try to influence the business side of it, because psychology and business, it could be two separate things, but psychology actually really plays such a huge role in business. So can you tell us what made you want to get into the business side of things?
Yeah, I'll try to make it short. I'll do my best. How about that? So I did start my career as a psychologist, and I'll have to be honest, nearly from the start, I was an entrepreneur. So I went into business for myself, um, practically straight out of my postdoc,
Wow, that's
and
impressive.
built a successful business. And I loved it for so long. And then I didn't. And the problem with falling out of love with it is I was 34, 33. I was young. And I had 3, 4 more decades of work ahead of me. And I had to think about, right, how I took all the things I loved about being a psychologist, which is helping people transform their lives, having rich conversations, the one-on-one piece, also the skill set I had, and leveraging that in new ways that felt more exciting, more aligned with the woman I'd become. I started and did what most people who find themselves in those quarter life, midlife crises do, which is I started off opening a life coaching business. And I tried to make it completely different from my brick and mortar business. It was
How so?
online, it was evergreen products, all these, like, it had to be completely different. And then I hated it. I burnt myself out. I spent years, probably 3.5, nearly 4 years, trying to build a business, doing all the things I was told I needed to do, and getting no results, being broke really from a financial perspective from the business. I was still a psychologist at the time, so I was doing both things.
Yeah, and that could be draining on its own. It's like you're making all this money doing your job, but you're trying to apply it to make a business successful, but you're just first burned out in two areas because you're doing
Yeah.
two jobs, two full-time, maybe even, triple full-time work because you're starting a business and you see no results. Now, that could be very draining and very discouraging, but it's also very hard for somebody to say, okay, well, this is not working. I'm going to quit, either fully quit and not try to do my business at all, or I'm going to go ahead and reassess what I'm doing and try to pivot and do something else.
Yeah.
What was your experience with that? How was just that emotional, that emotional disappointment from, okay, it's not working, but what am I going to do next?
There are a couple of things. One is I really didn't think I had an option. And this is what I mean. I don't know about you, but I was raised to be a good girl. I did all the things that I was told I needed to do. And up until that point in my life was really like, my mom, I'm number 3 of 3. She's like, this is my third one. She's the one who never gives us any reason to worry. So part of me was like this desire to finally do something that was right for me, not just that was right. The other thing is, after having my children, I have 2 sons that are now 11 and 14, but at the time they were young, they were under 5. I found myself suddenly way more ambitious. The idea of
Wow.
having a small like business to myself where I could make a good living, come back, like that did not appeal to me. The sense of potential misery from that was really, really big. But I was really lucky. I have 2 friends who work in the corporate world. They're a couple. He had done entrepreneurial work. And I asked them, how do we translate my skill set to the corporate world? And they would have helped me. But they both convinced me, they're like, give it 2 more years. You clearly love this stuff. And in those 2 years, I took 6 months off after I burnt out. And I spent those 6 months asking myself, what did I love about what I built? What worked for me? And then what didn't work for me? And who do I want to work with? And that's how I got to where I am now, because what I wanted to work with is women who I kept on seeing leave not just their companies, they were leaving their industries, a little bit like I was doing with psychology, but altogether because they were so frustrated at working so hard to get so little. And that's what really got me started into what I'm doing now.
So it was really just not giving up or not totally calling it quits on the company you were trying to build for those 4 years, but it was, okay, hold on, let me step back, let me look at everything, let me analyze it and see like what are the parts that I need to adjust and pivot to see like what's going to work for me. And then for you, you became very specific with your audience and who you're going to cater to, and to specifically what. And I love that. I love that so much. And honestly, nowadays, one thing I hate is that a lot of the younger generations, people quit too easily in anything, in relationships and work and life, like in starting a business. If it's not working for 6 months, a year, they're like, okay, well, maybe it's not right for me. Maybe I'm not the right person, instead of just stepping back and doing exactly what you did. And I mean, 4 years, that takes a lot of like self-belief and sacrifice for you to keep going until, you saw the benefits, you saw some results. So I love hearing that, because so many people, like I said, I hear that they try something a little bit and they think, okay, it's not right, but they totally just quit, or they jump and do something different that's totally off of what they know that they love, just because it didn't work the first time around or the first version of it. So I think that's kind of what I would like to share with the audience, with the listeners, from your story, to take that as a lesson and really not give up, right? That's the thing. And then you can really get where you want to get, as long as you're stepping back, reevaluating, and moving forward. And like your friend said, give it 2 more years, right? Yeah. Before giving up. And I think that's great. I think in a lot of people, in a lot of cases with some people, it would even be like, give it like 3 more months, 6 more months. You don't know what's coming until you push through all those hardships. So congratulations on making it through and finding your dream job, basically.
Yeah, thank you. And, for the listeners also, for me, a big piece was, I'm lucky. I came with a background as a psychologist. I knew what questions to ask myself. I understood my anxieties, like all the fears and things. I knew which ones I could give into and which ones I had to just let go. But the starting point is, are you clear about what it is you need to feel fulfilled and satisfied? And I was really clear about those things. The question just became, how do I get there? Mm-hmm. And the other piece, which I use all the time as a coach for my clients, actually I had a session with a client right before this, and we were doing it, is that growth mindset. So looking at obstacles, and instead of looking at obstacles and going, oh, I guess I can't do it because there's this, I'm like, those things are real. These are our roadblocks. Can we overcome them? Is there a way to work around them? And if there's not, then they're just another data point. There's something we need to factor in. But if I know I want to head somewhere, the question isn't, why can't I? It's, how do I?
And I think just reframing that question just gives you a significant amount of chance to actually solve that problem. Just reframing it and looking as a problem to solve that does have a solution, versus it having to fully be a roadblock and stop you. Now, can you talk to us a little bit more about that? Because I know that's like huge, the way we look at things, the way we look at problems, and the way we reframe our thinking. Can you just educate our listeners a little bit about that, and what you would advise on some young entrepreneurs that are just getting started?
Yeah, I got the huge smile on my face when you said this, because I've been recently talking about this a lot more. The first thing you need to understand, any of us, when it comes to mindset, is what you think becomes your reality. It does not matter what the world is like. All that matters is what you believe the world is. And we see this play out in politics and the world all the time. Two people look at the same set of events and come to wildly different conclusions, and therefore feel differently and act differently. So that's the really first thing, is we are better off if we can take the time to understand what we're thinking about something, and to make sure that the way we're thinking is rational. I can go into that a little bit more. Yes. The second thing to know is your emotions are an external manifestation of your thoughts. You can think of your emotions as a knee-jerk reaction to your thoughts. So if I have a sad thought, if I have a thought like I'm worthless, I will, knee-jerk reaction, probably feel sad or scared, right? If I believe that the world is full of possibility and I'm presented with a new opportunity, I'm much more likely to feel excited and motivated. So emotions are knee-jerk reactions to your thoughts, which means that you can often, if you slow down, use your emotions as a great starting point to understand what you're thinking. And we never do this thing where you say, why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling anxious? Because the tendency when that happens is for us to say, why am I feeling anxious? Well, the economy is like a mess right now and business is slow. I don't know if that's the case for you, but that's the case for me. It's the truth.
Just overall, yeah, I think for
Right.
everybody I talk to right now, that's the case. In two different levels for different people, but I think overall that's the case.
I work with finance and with STEM. So every single time a bank collapses, I'm like, no. And then when it's something like Silicon Valley Bank, I'm like, oh no, you just combined tech and finance. What are you doing?
What's happening? Should I freak out now?
So it's not that the economy is slow that's making me anxious. It's that the economy is slow, which is a fact.
But it's how people are reacting to it.
It's my beliefs about. So if I tell myself, because the economy is slow, I'm not going to make any business. Because I can't build any new business, I am going to go broke. Because I'm going to go broke, all my dreams are shattered.
Or I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to lose my partner. Right. It just goes in that downward spiral.
But if I can look at the truth, and the truth is the economy is slow, what does that probably mean? I'm going to make less business as long as it's slow.
And that may not even necessarily be true. Just like COVID, as things were going horrible, some people's businesses, honestly, including ours, we were one of those niches that it did amazing. You know, sometimes in the face of the worst times economically, a lot of people make a lot of money. So I think if you, again, one of the things too is how we're going to look at it. You may want to see it as an opportunity to be able to invest, you know, when everything's low, right? Or just see what you can do, like what market you can cater to that would need that support when the economy is low. So I think like what you were talking about, it's just how we look at it as well.
And sometimes we're looking at, first of all, I love that you say that, because I have to say 2020 is when my business has skyrocketed. And then from then on, it's been like multiple, like revenue multiplying every single year since then. And I panicked in 2020.
I did too initially.
And really what it's coming down to is this is not about being all positive, Pollyanna, everything's going to be fine. That's not true. Lots of times things won't be fine, but it is a question of making sure that that your head isn't doing that thing where it catastrophizes or over exaggerates. You and I had talked about, before we started, kind of what was one of the biggest challenges I overcame, right? One of my biggest challenges as a human being and as a professional, and especially as a woman trying to build a business, is this belief that I have. It's not true. I've mostly knocked it out, but it still creeps up. And this belief goes something like this. It's not that I'm not good enough. I totally know I'm good enough. That's not an issue. It's that it doesn't matter how good I am. People will not pay for the value I bring them. Right. And there's a whole backdrop childhood story. Wow. Right. Sure. There's all the stories that lead to it.
I'm sure you understand your own, since you have a psychology background, you understand your own issues. But sometimes even when we understand it, it's hard to fix it. Right.
Yeah. So, well, and just knowing it doesn't change it. Like I know the origin story for that belief. I know it's not my origin story, right? It goes back to my dad being a failed entrepreneur. It's not my origin story. I know that this has been disproven in my career, but I also know that belief pops up sometimes, and that when it pops up, it feels a certain way. And when that happens, I can behave reactively. So for your listeners and for you, while we're at it, if you can slow down often enough to pay attention to the way you're feeling and understand where it's coming, you might catch that one self-limiting belief that's going to make you sabotage a negotiation, a job opportunity, your relationships, whatever it is. And in the beginning, knowing it's going to feel really cool, but just because you know it's there doesn't mean it goes away. So the question becomes, how do I continue doing what I need to be doing even when I'm feeling this way?
Yeah.
And
So
the
what
more
do I
you
do
challenge it, the
about it?
shorter the moments where you'll feel that, and the less intensely you'll feel it. And over years, it takes years. I've known this since I was 26. I'm going to be 46 this year, so 20 years. Um,
Hey, as long as there's progress, right? That's
there's
what I
progress.
always aim for. And that's all we could do as humans. None of us are perfect. And as long as there's progress in the areas that we're unhappy with ourselves, that's all we can ask from
Yep.
ourselves. So I think that's been my way to kind of be okay with my flaws as long as I'm working on it. And there's even a tiny bit of progress. I am okay. I'm good. I'm happy. It gives me that happy, like that good feeling to keep me going. Um, but yes, things take time. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. They just, again, we're in the convenience world and time and era. Like we all want everything now and yesterday. Like I don't want to wait more than 3 minutes to get my food, you know? So
Mhm.
it's hard for people. I think more than ever, it's the hardest now for people to just wait things out or work on things that takes time. So how as you were talking about, how else would you advise our listeners to, I guess, be more patient with themselves as they're working to become their best version?
One of the things I'd add, and it's you talking about it takes time that made me think about it, is it's normal to feel like crap. We are so conditioned to want to feel good all the time, to want to feel amazing, to being
Mm-hmm.
told we need to be positive. It is normal to feel anxious. It is normal to feel down. It is normal to feel paralyzed and pause. And if we don't freak out when that happens, it's much easier to just take it in stride and go, okay, I'm having one of those days. Right? That is a big thing. The biggest tool that I teach women I work with, and this goes back to my years as a psychologist, the first step to feeling better is slowing down. And we do something called the art of nothing, or that's what I call it, which is literally their micro breaks. The shortest would be 2 minutes, but once you practice it enough, you'll fall in love with it. It'll be like 45 minutes of just sitting and doing nothing. You're not listening to music. You're not doing a meditation. You're not listening to a podcast. You're not tidying up your desk. You just like sit and stare out a window. I don't know.
I mean,
And
that's easier said than done for some people, I'm sure, because it's almost like meditation you're talking about, like if you're sitting and silencing your mind and not doing anything. But for people who are anxious and are feeling like they can't stop their mind, how do you do that? I
you
think,
don't, the goal is not to stop your mind.
okay.
That's where I'm saying. Like I started this when I was building my first coaching business because I had a kid under two, a kid around 4 or 5 years old. I was the days I was working out of the house, I had a full therapy practice, right, where I do 8 hours of therapy sessions, right, not to mention all the work that you have to do outside of those sessions. And then on the days I wasn't doing that, I was taking care of the 2-year-old while trying to build this business. And I just couldn't stop. And I'm by nature more anxious. My area of expertise as a psychologist was anxiety and perfectionism, which I am both. I used to be. And so I was just so mad that I couldn't sit down without feeling guilty, that I couldn't take a break without it making me anxious, that I grew up in France. I didn't move to the States till I was 18. And I'm of Italian descent, thus Alessandra. And I would sit and drink my afternoon espresso on my back porch and give myself 5 minutes. And it was excruciatingly difficult.
Wow.
So with the art of nothing, the goal is not to clear your mind. I can't do that. I have a monkey brain. It never shuts up. The idea is just to say, let it run. Let it run.
But physically, at least, don't do anything to kind of give your mind a time to
Mhm.
run and relax, get
It's
it
the
out.
pause to give yourself the time to go, holy cow, I'm really anxious. Cool. What's this about? Oh, well, I'm thinking of the grocery list I have to take care of, the business list I have to take care of. I know it's past now, but like taxes are due. Da, da, da. Okay. Right? Can I breathe? But I never shut my best ideas. My best ideas come when I'm doing the art of nothing. My brain is definitely not silent.
Okay. I think that's the first, not for me at least. I haven't heard that for a while, because a lot of times when we're trying to wusa, I guess it's that's what we're advised, the
Mhm.
meditation piece of it. We want to silence our mind, but that's been a really hard practice for someone like me too, because my brain's always going too. Actually, I'm actively working on that to be able to just really be present and just silence my mind, but I'll let you guys know once I accomplish that. I have not. But the art of nothing, that's what you called
Mhm.
it, right? That practice, it sounds like anybody could do it as long as they put a little bit of work. It sounds doable, like I don't have to stop my brain. I can literally just be, I'm stepping out, I'm going to have a coffee and just sit there, right? Um,
It's like, you know what you do if you're in front of a campfire? When you just like kind of stare, you're
yeah.
not silencing your brain, you're just there. You can stand up, you can look around, your eyes can move, you don't need to be still. I was exactly like you. I was paying people to help me meditate and could not. And it drove me nuts. It made me so angry. That's when I was like, screw this. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to, I'm going to give myself 5 minutes from putting the baby down to starting to work on my business.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes, honestly, on weekends, I get my coffee in the morning. I'll go sit outside. I got a nice backyard and I can stay there until somebody calls me back into the house at this point.
Nice. Well, yeah, I guess everything is practice, right? Practice makes perfect. Just start with 2 minutes, like you said, and then work
Mhm.
your way up. But one thing I personally like to do for the listeners too that have a very busy mind, for me, if I'm going to take like a time out and I need to sit down and have my break, that's what I love to do. But I need a journal. I need to write it down. I need to get it out of my head. That's what works for me. Because if
Mhm.
I sit there and I don't like get it out for some reason, half the time it'll work because I'm just like, okay, pause. And then the other half the time, my brain would go so much where it just kind of drives me more crazy. It drives me more anxiety because I just want to get up and go do it, instead of just thinking about all those things. But for me, that's what helps me put things on hold. I'll literally write down all that clutter that's in my head and put it on paper. Then literally take a deep breath. I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. It's on paper, it doesn't look that bad. It's not as much stuff that I need to do that's in my head.
Mhm.
But back to you, I'm very curious. Let's get to our official interview questions, where I can talk forever about these things. What is one thing that you've been told that you can't do and you proved people wrong or yourself wrong?
Other than build a successful business, that was a big one.
Were people telling you can't do it, or just your belief in society as a
You
woman?
know, I would say, and this I use a lot with my clients, I think we are subtly or not so subtly told we can't speak up, we can't talk about ourselves, we can't do the things that we need to be successful as women, because if we do, people will. People will feel negatively about us. We'll have pushback. I have this story that I often share. When I was a graduate student, I was asked to come in to do some testing on a patient in the psychiatric ward over the weekend. And I had so much other work I had to do. And so I look at my supervisor, who was the guy everybody was afraid of at the time. And I asked him, if I do the testing this weekend, will they get out over the weekend? No. Will they get out earlier on Monday? No. The psychiatric team rounds at this time. So I said no. Nobody said no. And I was scared because remember, I'm a good girl. I do all the things people tell me to do.
Yeah.
And and they told me, what do you mean no? And I said, well, I have to do this. I like, if it's not going to make a difference, I'll come in first thing on Monday. I was told you should be like somebody else. They would come in. And I was like, that's the last thing I want to be, like this person. They say yes to everything. And later on, I was pulled into another room by another supervisor because I had done this. And by the way, the patient got out at exactly the same time they would have gotten out if I had done the testing over the weekend. And I was told that it was very manipulative of me.
Mm.
And I looked at them, and this was another woman. She was a young woman. And I was so mad.
Of course.
And I told her, I really resent that. So you're telling me that I set good boundaries and that because people like me, I get away, which is problematic, right? That whole concept, I get away with setting those boundaries. Right? And that makes me manipulative. I mean, I am clearly asking for what I want, what I need, when I need it. That is not manipulative. And I said, I resent that. And I just kind of left. And by the way, I graduated on time with my PhD. I got my job. It didn't keep me. But these are things we're told we can't do. You shouldn't speak up. You shouldn't balk at authority. You shouldn't set the limits because bad things will happen. I'm like, you'll get pushback.
Of
You'll
course.
you'll anger people. If you can continue calmly, I was really calm, as angry as I was, super calm, arguing for how illogical that is, or biased, or whatever. More times than not, the cost of that behavior is worth what you get from it. Like nobody ever did that to me again.
Good. Well, yeah, I believe that. I mean, we all have to stand up for what we believe is right. That's what it comes down to me. You know, it's not you didn't want to do it, it just was not right for you. And you're protecting your boundaries and you're saying no. And I think even just saying no, I actually had an issue with that a long time ago too. That was like one thing I literally spent maybe like a year just on myself working on how to say no, because I had found myself being burnt out by just saying
Mhm.
yes to meaningless things just because I couldn't say no. But it's a whole other story. But yes, I think we we need to all practice saying no, and saying no is okay. But you need to obviously deep down know that it's the right thing to do. You don't want to just say no because you're being lazy or you don't want to take on extra work and you have the time to be a good team player. But if deep down you know what you're doing is right, you definitely need to stand up for what it is, respect yourself, and other people will respect you. And my experience has been anytime I've stood up for myself and I've been around people and jobs that don't respect that, I have evolved to a better position and better companies where they would respect, you know, me respecting myself. So don't be afraid of that. Like I think that's what I would want to add to what you said. Like in your experience, after that, nobody treated you that way. It's almost like the pushover thing, you know, because I have
Mhm.
very young kids too. Like my one of them is 2.5, and that's what I teach him too. Like push back. Like you don't be a pushover, you know, like yeah, don't hit kids, but you need to stand up for yourself and stand up for what you want and is right in that situation. But I think we as adults who maybe didn't grow up that way in our generation, we can definitely work on that. And I'm glad you bring that up, because until today I see a lot of people, adults like in very high positions, having that issue of standing up for themselves and saying no, this is not the right thing. And sometimes, you know, their bosses or their colleagues are doing something totally wrong and they don't have the guts to speak up and, you know, do the right thing. So
You know,
thank you.
one of the ways, sorry for interrupting, that it ties
Please.
back to the work I do with women, and this is really important. When I that I did, it's one of the things I didn't say is when I was arguing with this Dr. Lovett. He loved Dr. Lovett because he was a, I don't know if I can say this, but you can take it out if you don't want. Like he was a hard ass. But he
No,
was
that's
so good at what he did, and he was fair. But he was one of those people, as I said, everybody was afraid of. Is I asked him, I'm like, do I do my job well? Is there any reason, does anybody have any complaints about the quality of my work, about what am I doing? And the answer was no, because at the time they even had me working with another mentor and taking on extra difficult cases because they thought like they wanted to continue building the talent. So I was taking on more work. And that was really my arguments when we're working with, you know, you talking about saying no. The thing is, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So
yeah,
that
because
can
there's
help
just
be a
so much
reframe.
time.
But the idea is to articulate your value when you're saying no. I'm saying no to this because it's not the best use of my time. It's not the best use of my skill set. It's not where I can make the greatest impact. Or sometimes I'm just going to say no because it's not right for me. But to be able to articulate why that no is a mindful, purposeful no, not just reactive, I don't want to do that, but rather
Mm-hmm.
this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I think we yeah needed to fully hear that. So tell us a little bit more about your company, Noteworthy, and how you position men and women to succeed in their own line of work.
Okay. So noteworthy is my legacy, right? You talk about building something you love. It might take you a few iterations to go back to what you were saying about pushing and not giving up. But once you get it right, it will take you many iterations to figure out what right for you looks like. But noteworthy makes me have this stupid grin on my face. It's an executive coaching business, as I said, that is founded on helping women in male dominated spaces, specifically finance and STEM, like tech, biotech, pharma. I'll explain both of those in a second, why specifically those male dominated spaces reach the highest levels of leadership. And our mission, my personal mission, is to make sure that I get so many women to the highest levels of leadership that it's no longer noteworthy. That's the name of the company, right?
Oh, I
Now
love
it's
that.
super noteworthy, right? Oh, look, we get the first woman this, we get the first woman that. We're in America, we haven't even had a first woman president. There's
Yeah.
third world countries that have had women presidents, right? So the day we have that, it's going to be so noteworthy. I want to get to the place where that parity is there and we don't need to mention it. I work with women in STEM and women in finance for two reasons. Finance, because money is power. And money is not just power for the individual, it's power for the whole economy. So when the people holding the purse strings all look a certain way, all think a certain way, then there are other people who have dreams that require that money. And those dreams don't happen. Like venture capital funding for women founders get less than 3% of funding from venture capital firms. Why? Do women have terrible ideas? Like, are our ideas so much worse? Our company's so much worse. Women of color, it starts moving to under 1%. Why? Are Black women's ideas
A
so much more terrible?
huge difference.
It's because humans naturally, are drawn to support and elevate people who are part of their circle of trust. And among a group of strangers, one of the easiest ways to establish whether you're part of my circle of trust is what you look like. Are you like me? So I'm much more likely to support a guy's company if we mix
Yeah.
up who's doing all this, who has control over that money, who has control over the financial system,
And
and we can
that's
build a
a
much more egalitarian system.
and that's a problem that's gonna take a long time to fully even out, to fully make it fair all around. But wow, yes, I haven't thought about that in a long time because, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm in that environment. Sometimes I forget that grand picture of things, of how unfair things are,
Mhm.
and that, on the bigger scale. But do you have statistics in your? I'm just curious now. Like rough statistics in your area, industries of experts for finance and STEM. What's the percentage of women versus men that are in the executive positions
Oh, they're
currently?
terrible. I think I don't know for those areas specifically. I'd have to go. I have them pulled out somewhere.
Yeah, the
But
report
when
says
we look
this.
at women in leadership, I think it's under 5% of CEOs are women, right?
Just
It's the
America.
numbers are really abysmal. When we look, I live in San Diego, and when we look at the tech space, it's something like 1 in 4 hires is a woman, and that's not necessarily even just leadership.
So why do you think that is? I mean, our conversation is going totally in a different direction now, but I'm very curious to pick
Well,
your brain about that since you feel passionately to bridge that gap, right? So why do you think that is besides the obvious of that's how it's been done for so many years?
we're actually going in exactly the same thing because we're talking about what I do and why I do it. And so to me, it's all the same
Okay, I
conversation.
love it.
There are a couple reasons. One is what you just mentioned. The system is what it is, and we can complain about it and we can think it's not fair, but it is what it is, and it's been established. And so, like any system, it takes time. And it's rare, unless somebody wants to have a true revolution, to be able to just break a system overnight. You have to change the system slowly. You have to push slowly to get where you want to go. The other piece, and this is part of the system, I believe, has to do with how girls and women are raised. So visibility is the number one factor associated with advancement for women. Not mentorship, not coaching, not skills, not school, visibility.
So what do you mean by visibility, actually? I'm a
Well,
little...
so let me, from the time you and I were little girls, we've been taught, be humble, don't talk about yourself, don't make it about yourself,
Yeah.
don't tell people what you're great at, don't do that. This is not acceptable. And what women internalize is being humble means I need to be self-effacing. So women are going into the workplace, they're working really hard, they're doing great things, but they don't talk about what they're doing. They're not explaining or educating. This is the reframe that I use with Noteworthy Women. This isn't about bragging. We want to educate people. People need to understand, what skill set are you bringing to the table? They need to understand how good you're at something. So they don't just, for me, need to know, oh, she's really good at solving problems and understanding how things works, or she's good at this. They need to understand how good I am. If that's an expertise, I have to be able to come in and say, I'm really good at that. And then, because we're not used to talking about ourselves, we're also not used to explaining how we use that skill set to create the impact we want to create. Which means that what you find pretty typically is women who are working their butts off, and they have this one fallacy: my work will speak for itself. If I just keep my nose to the grindstone, work hard enough, people will see the results and I'll get promoted. And it doesn't work that way.
And that's the visibility you're talking about.
That's the visibility. You have to come in, you have to be able to tell people, listen, like I did with my supervisor way back when, right? What I love doing, and this is the bypass for women, by the way, you talk about what you're passionate about, then you talk about what you're good about. If you just come out and talk about what you're good at as a woman, because the way the system is, you'll get pushback. Women and men will look at you and go, who does she think she is? So for a woman, it's easier to come in and go, I loved working on this project. It was so much fun.
Huh.
Part of the reason it was so much fun is because I got to use these skills. And by the way, those are some of my top skills, right? That's the stuff I'm really good at. Because I'm really good at it, I'm able to have this kind of outcome, this kind of impact. So if ever you need somebody to do this kind of stuff.
So it's even in the script of things for women in leadership, like literally the way you hold that conversation to help you stand out as a leader or get noticed, get visible, to be considered to, move up in those roles. All of that matters. Even the way we approach the conversation of, look, I'm good enough. Wow. And that's where the psychology piece comes in, right? Because the way we say things, it really depends how the person in front of us is gonna receive that information or push back. So that's awesome. I'm so glad there's someone like you doing that work, But yes, like personally, personally what I think like somebody needs to do, well, I think we are doing, like, for the younger, like our generation, for our kids, I am raising my daughter to be able to, she's like one, but I'm already like putting that in her head, like, you're a leader, you could do whatever you want. So I think it is going to take time, but like it's our job for the newer generations to embed that mentality in the youth, because that's going to be so much easier to have a longer lasting, like a bigger impact in the long run. Obviously it'll take time because it's easier to program something that's blank compared to changing a program that's already there. And as adults, like, that's what you're doing the hard work, you're changing the program of the adults that are already have these different beliefs that we want to change. So like you said, women could be more accepted as leaders, for that 5% to hopefully change into 10, 15, 20 one day. But wow, I love that so much. I haven't thought about that in such a long time.
Well, you made a really important point, right? You said this helps us make more impact, and it does. Think about if you could get hired every day to do the stuff that you are best suited to do and love the most. A lot of the women I know I work with, in order to be seen to create value, they raise their hand for everything. Sure, yes, you talked about how difficult it is to say no. Because you can do it, you're like, I'll do it. But over time, what happens? You start getting burnt out. You start getting resentful. You get known to do work you hate doing. And the longer that goes on, the less engaged, the less productive, the less effective you become. But what if you were hired every day to walk into work and the work you did was not only stuff that you excel at, but stuff you love? Companies benefit. This is the argument I make to companies. I'm like, this is how you boost your bottom line. You keep morale high. You keep your workforce engaged and you retain your people. Like, let them do what they love best. But as women, we're so terrible at even knowing what that is, if let alone talking about it.
So since you are a psychology major, I thought about another question actually that I'm very curious to what your thoughts are on about it. So obviously, like biologically, scientifically, women are built and our brain and everything's different than males. So how do you think that plays a role in these leadership positions today?
It's a big question. I don't have all the answers. I know that when you look at women leadership styles versus men, there are two big things that tend to emerge. One is that women tend to be more what we call situational leaders, which means that women in general, this is an overgeneralization, but tend to adapt how they lead based on situations, versus men tend to have more fixed leadership styles. And regardless of the situation, that is their leadership approach to it. Women will change things around. There's sometimes where they have to be more collaborative and other times where they have to be more authoritative and other times where they shift. And then the other thing that we tend to see more with women is a more collaborative style in general. So really wanting to check in on all pieces and bring a little bit more consensus. There's a time for that.
Honestly, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but honestly, when you talk about that right now, I feel like things are clicking in my head, coming together. But in the past, and I don't know if this will help you with your line of work and to push your mission, but in the past, the like leaderships, men or women, like the types of positions, well, from what I've noticed, have been very different. It's been very like, this is what you do. I'm telling you to do it. I'm your boss. You have to follow it. But as things are changing and in the world, like a lot of things are changing and how the younger workforce is working, things are changing and evolving where that's not going to cut it. Like the workforce today is not going to just say, okay, fine, you're my boss, I'm going to listen to you. They are going to give more pushback. They are going to ask for you to kind of try to work with them and have the convenience, because this is what we're all about now. And that's the message that's been slowly out there, you know? So with what you said, it does really sound like the natural ability of a woman leader, like the collaborative, trying to put people in different, like trying to understand people's situation with different points of views, because that's how our brains are built, seems like it's going to be a better fit for the workforce. I mean, that's just my 2 cents now, just like trying to put all that together. So there may be a huge, opportunity for women leaders to kind of, I guess, not sell themselves, but like you said, like tell their bosses about themselves in regards to that. Yeah, I see it.
It's there. I mean, there's still tons of pushback. We know that when women tend to fail, there's more visibility around their failure. There's more criticism. We are talking about articulating your value. And by the way, I'm not saying men are doing this. Like, men and women are doing this. Men and women are more critical when women fail. Men and women are more.
Yes.
I always use the example, like, everybody loves when a celebrity comes out and says, look at me, I am powerful, hear me roar. My go-to example is Beyonce and Sasha Fierce. Like, everybody loves Sasha Fierce. She's so strong. She's so powerful. But if you or I did that in our office, men and women around us would look and go, who does she think she is? These are things, the leadership practices that I teach, they're not women specific, but the approach, how we go about doing it, and then the psychology of how I get women to do things that aren't natural to them or feel scary. That is very woman specific.
But do you think if the woman does have that confidence and really does go out there and look at me roar, the like the public or whoever they're saying that to is gonna accept it more compared to how we're scared to do that in a way, and we don't go out confidently and say, "Hear me roar." We just like, "Oh, maybe you can hear me roar." You know what I mean? So that's like one thing. You have statistics and you've worked with people, so that's one thing I'm curious about, because in in just from my observation, I feel like just that confidence factor of the way you say it, the way you approach it, about hear me roar,
Mhm.
it makes a huge difference. But you're saying it doesn't matter. You're
I
still going to be
wish,
pursue.
no, I wish what you're saying is true. I just know that with human psychology, we don't like that. Not yet.
Mm,
We might change that down the line. So what we want is for women to understand what their value is, to feel confident and to be able to build that in the conversation so that, yeah, they can confidently and unapologetically say, I'm I should be working on this project. And here's why, because this is my area of expertise. This is what I love. Or this is my startup idea. This is why it's going to be successful. And I know this, and that confidence can show up there. We still live in a world where, unfortunately, if everyday women who have not been able to build up the celebrity status come out and say, I'm amazing, they will get their heads cut off. That is not something that we accept.
hmm.
So there's a subtlety to it. I mean, when you think, one of the things I talk about is how to be really successful as a woman without being labeled as a, can I say the full word?
Yes.
Okay, as a bitch. And this idea that we're all good with the soft, super collaborative woman, but then we criticize her because she's too soft, she's too whatever. But if a woman comes up and she's just very like down to business or super confident, she gets called a bitch. I would love to change the system. I can't change the
And I
system,
think
not
it
all at
will.
once.
I think it will slowly but surely, with amazing
Exactly.
people, doing work like you, the awareness. I think a lot of the youth right now have a lot to do with that too. So all our listeners, like literally is just going to take a mentality shift slowly, 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 but to really like see things in a different point of view, and I think now, and I think now with having more options with childcare, for example. So like women, like, because that was a huge one for me. Like I got thrown off for 2 years when I had kids, and this is still very, very recent for me. And I think I'm still kind of thrown off with like my leadership like
Mhm.
attitude and like I'm gonna take over the world, but once I realized, okay, no, there's some solutions. Even though I'm the mother, I want to be there present with my kids, I can still find a way to balance that. And I think
Yeah.
if more and more people do that and more people show that, hey, like I can still be a woman, because I think like people don't say that very upfront, but that's a thing too. Like they think, oh, if you have kids or you're gonna get pregnant, like it's nobody's supposed to discriminate like that. But I know a lot of the work field probably think that in the back of their head, that, like that's a weakness that women have. They're going to want to be like a nurturer or a mother, and that takes away from like their leadership. But
Mhm.
I think if more and more people prove that wrong and like speak up about it, like you said, try to be visible about it, that would definitely help shift it too.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And 2 years is good. You're ahead of the curve. I would say 5 years. Having children slows you down 5 years. It doesn't stop you in your career, but
True.
slows you down 5 years from your last kid.
It's got to hang on tight for 3 more years. I
You
hear
just
you.
have to get them into kindergarten.
Okay, so I know we're short on time, and I'm sure your calendar's booked. So, one last thing I would want to ask you for you to cover would be, what are the 3 fail-proof techniques to regain control of our time, energy, and life? Because I know a lot of times, me included, we feel like we lost control. So, what is some techniques you can share with us, or
Okay,
your
what I'm going to
last
repeat.
words of wisdom?
Yeah, what I'm going to repeat for what I said before. Number one, practice some version of the art of nothing. Practice taking micro breaks throughout your day. Slow down, stop. You'll get your work done, but take a minute to just be. You don't need to clear your mind. It's going to lead to the second technique, because in that break you take, you can you can assess how you're feeling and start responding instead of reacting to it. That would be the second big piece. And again, for anybody listening, I know I do executive coaching, but I started my career nearly 20 years as a psychologist, and my area of expertise was anxiety, perfectionism, burnout. We didn't call it burnout. So that's the second one. Like, learn to slow down, take breaks during your day that don't involve your phone or your computer or checking email, like just 2-3 minutes. During those 2-3 minutes, at some point, just check into where you're tense, what's going on in your head, breathe out, even just once, and ask yourself what you want to do. And then the other thing I would say is, this thing made me look like a superstar when I was a psychologist, when I would work with super busy people. The first 15 to 30 minutes of your day, don't look at screens. If you use your phone as your alarm, go online and go buy yourself a good old-fashioned analog or digital alarm that rings. But if you can start your day, I promise I'd have like people coming in with panic attacks and so stressed and going to the hospital because they thought they were having heart attacks. And if I could get them to do that, the first 15 to 30 minutes of your day screen-free, they'd come back. I look like a miracle worker.
Wow. And I believe that, it's like how we set our day. And that's kind of, when we're late from work, our day kind of seems like being shitty because it just starts off bad. So I could see that if you're starting your morning off smooth and not stressed about the million emails and million notifications, I could totally see how that would just give you kind of like, okay, I have a minute to breathe and then start my day.
It's checking in with yourself before you check in the world with the world. When you grab your phone and you check your email or you check the news or you check, whatever, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, you're checking in with everybody else before you've ever taken a second to check in with yourself.
I love that. So in the mornings, what's one thing you ask yourself when you're checking in?
Well, at this point, it's not even a conscious process. It's like I have a routine. So when I think checking in, it's very quickly, I'm always assessing how stressed am I today, right? Am I waking up rested or am I waking up feeling stressed? If I'm feeling stressed, what am I stressing about? And does it make sense? Like, am I over stressing over something I don't need to do? And then I just have a routine that involves that art of nothing, where I take the dogs out and I just stand with my cup of coffee for 2 minutes. I'll let the dogs do their business. It's not magic.
That. I love that. Well, we're out of time. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us and putting a nice, bright, motivating morning to my day. I always love speaking to other women, other people who are trying to make a difference in the world, and especially such important roles to have impact on other people. Coaching, I think, is amazing because not only you're changing the world slowly, but you're also changing so many people's lives, and then they affect other people. So it's like a very fun trickling effect. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for all that you shared with us. And please be in touch, and we'll be more than happy to link all your information below. But if people want to kind of be in touch with you, be connected, where can they find you?
2 places. One is the website, which is noteworthyinc.co. And then the other thing is LinkedIn. I like anybody who wants updates on what's going on, my latest rant, my tips, strategies, LinkedIn.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again. You have an amazing day, and until next time. Bye.
Thank you
to our listeners.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast. Follow and engage with us on social media under the Yegi Project. And if you're interested in being a guest, email info@theyegiproject.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.